Kyle Bass emerges as top contender for high-profile Treasury or defense position amid Trump administration's heightened focus on China relations. Date: January 30, 2025. In a significant development within the Trump administration, hedge fund manager Kyle Bass is emerging as a leading candidate for a key position in either the Treasury or Defense Department. This potential appointment comes at a time when U.S. China relations are under intense scrutiny and the administration is reaffirming its hardline stance against Beijing. Background on Kyle Bass. Kyle Bass is widely recognized for his bold investment strategies and his critical perspective on China. He gained prominence during the 2008 financial crisis for his successful bets against the U.S. housing market, which showcased his ability to navigate complex economic landscapes. Over the years, Bass has positioned himself as a vocal critic of China's economic policies, arguing that they pose substantial risks to both the U.S. economy and national security. His insights into global markets and economic trends have garnered attention, making him a credible figure in financial and political circles. His advocacy for a tougher approach toward China resonates with the Trump administration's objectives, particularly as the former president seeks to bolster economic security and defense strategies. Potential implications of Bass's appointment. Sources indicate that Bass's potential appointment could signal a shift in the administration's fiscal policy, particularly regarding China. Bloomberg emphasizes that his background aligns well with the administration's strategic priorities, suggesting that he could help craft a more aggressive posture against Chinese influence in both economic and defense matters. In contrast, platforms like Yahoo Finance and Investing.com highlight Bass's financial expertise, presenting him as a pragmatic choice for managing delicate economic relations with China. Given his track record of predicting market downturns and economic shifts, he is viewed as a candidate capable of navigating the complexities inherent in U.S. China relations. The context of U.S. China relations. The consideration of Bass for a prominent role comes at a time of heightened tensions between the U.S. and China. The Trump administration has increasingly focused on countering China's growing economic and military influence, leading to a series of trade disputes and diplomatic confrontations. As the geopolitical landscape continues to evolve, Bass's potential appointment could have far-reaching implications for both U.S. economic policy and national defense strategy. Timeline leading to consideration. Bass's rise in consideration for a high-profile position is linked to his increasing visibility in discussions surrounding U.S. economic policy, especially during the recent trade tensions and the COVID-19 pandemic. His consistent criticism of Chinese economic practices has paralleled the Trump administration's evolving stance on international relations, positioning him as a fitting candidate for a role that would require both economic acumen and a firm understanding of geopolitical dynamics. Conclusion. As developments unfold regarding Kyle Bass's potential nomination, the implications for U.S. economic and defense policies could be significant. His alignment with the Trump administration's objectives concerning China, coupled with his financial expertise, positions him as a key player in navigating the complex landscape of U.S.-China relations. The administration's decision will be closely watched, as it may indicate a broader strategic shift in addressing the challenges posed by China on the global stage. Kyle Bass's potential candidacy for a significant role in the Trump administration, particularly in the Treasury or Defense Department, raises numerous counterintuitive points that challenge conventional assumptions about qualifications for high office and the direction of U.S. policy, especially concerning China. 1. Hedge fund manager. As a policymaker, traditionally positions in the Treasury or Defense Department are filled by individuals with extensive government experience or academic credentials in economics or international relations. However, Kyle Bass, primarily recognized as a hedge fund manager, is now being considered for such roles. This reflects a shift towards valuing financial acumen and market-oriented perspectives over conventional political pathways, suggesting a broader acceptance of diverse backgrounds in policymaking. 2. Critical stance on China versus economic integration. Kyle Bass's outspoken criticism of China and its economic practices contradicts the prevailing narrative of economic interdependence that has characterized U.S. China relations for decades. Many business leaders and policymakers have historically advocated for engagement with China through trade and investment. Bass's approach, which advocates for a more aggressive stance against China's economic policies, could signify a radical departure from this engagement model, raising questions about the implications for international trade in global markets. 3. Popularity of hardline approaches. The consideration of Bass for a high-profile position amid Trump's administration suggests an increasing acceptance of hardline approaches to foreign relations, particularly with China. While many analysts have cautioned against the potential fallout of such a stance, such as trade wars and economic isolation, Bass's popularity within the administration indicates a growing faction that believes aggressive measures are necessary to protect U.S. interests, countering the belief that diplomacy and soft power are the best routes for managing international relations. For Bass's market predictions versus real-world outcomes, Bass gained notoriety for his predictions about the U.S. housing market collapse and has made various forecasts regarding economic downturns related to Chinese economic practices. While his market insights have earned him respect in financial circles, the real-world applicability of his predictions to policymaking remains questionable. This situation raises the counterintuitive idea that successful investment strategies or predictions do not necessarily translate into effective governance or sound policy choices. 5. Perception of expertise. The articles suggest a growing belief that Bass's financial expertise could translate into effective management of economic relations, despite no prior experience in government or policy. This challenges the notion that direct experience in governance is a prerequisite for effective leadership in these roles. It suggests a belief that financial markets and geopolitical strategies are interlinked to such an extent that a strong background in finance is sufficient for navigating complex international issues. 6. Divergent media narratives. The different emphases in various media reports highlight a counterintuitive divergence in how Bass is perceived. While Bloomberg focuses on the strategic implications of his potential appointment and a possible shift in fiscal policy, other outlets like Yahoo Finance and Investing.com stress his financial background and market success. This indicates that the narrative surrounding political appointments can be heavily influenced by the source, reflecting differing priorities in interpreting the implications of such appointments. 7. Implications for future economic policy, if Bass is appointed. It may indicate a broader trend towards prioritizing aggressive economic policies over traditional diplomatic approaches. This reflects a counterintuitive potential shift in U.S. economic policy that may prioritize economic nationalism over globalization despite the historical benefits associated with global trade and investment. 8. Public sentiment on China relations. The Trump administration's interest in appointing someone like Bass may also reflect an evolving public sentiment toward China, which has become increasingly skeptical and critical in recent years. This is counterintuitive given that many businesses have benefited from Chinese markets, suggesting a possible disconnect between public opinion and business interests. 9. Risk of economic isolationism. By potentially appointing Bass, the administration may be embracing a form of economic isolationism that contrasts sharply with the previous decade's focus on globalization and trade liberalization. This represents a significant ideological shift that could have long-term consequences for the U.S. economy and its position in the global market. In conclusion, Kyle Bass's emergence as a top contender for a significant role in the Trump administration is laden with counterintuitive implications that challenge traditional beliefs about qualifications for high-office economic policy and international relations. His potential appointment could signify a transformative shift in how the U.S. engages with China, reflecting broader changes in public sentiment and the prioritization of financial expertise over conventional political experience. Kyle Bass's potential emergence as a key figure in the Trump administration, particularly in the Treasury or Defense Department, merits a closer examination, particularly regarding aspects that might be overlooked by casual observers. While much focus is naturally directed toward his financial background and criticism of China, several significant elements within this context deserve attention for their broader implications on U.S. policy and global relations. 1. Economic security versus national security. One of the most intriguing aspects of Base's candidacy is the intersection of economic and national security. While many discussions may revolve around his financial acumen, the significance lies in how this reflects a shift towards viewing economic policy through the lens of national security. This is a crucial pivot as it suggests that economic decisions will increasingly prioritize safeguarding national interests over traditional free market principles. Base's advocacy for a more aggressive posture against China indicates that he might propel policies that intertwine these domains, potentially leading to trade barriers, sanctions, or other measures aimed at curbing China's influence. 2. Influence on global markets. Base's reputation as a hedge fund manager who successfully predicted economic downturns positions him uniquely to sway investor confidence and market dynamics. His potential appointment could send ripples through global markets, particularly in sectors sensitive to U.S. China relations. Investors might react to his known positions, which could lead to volatility in markets, especially if he advocates for drastic measures against China, such as increased tariffs or restrictions. The significance here lies not just in the immediate market reactions but in the longer-term implications for international trade relationships and economic stability. 3. Public perception and credibility. The media portrayal of Base varies, with some outlets emphasizing his financial success while others focus on the strategic implications of his potential role. This divergence highlights the importance of public perception in his potential effectiveness as an official. If Base is seen as a credible figure who can bridge the gap between economic theory and practical policy, he could unify disparate factions within the government and among the public. This credibility could be significant in rallying support for potentially controversial policies aimed at China. 4. The role of ideological alignment. Base's alignment with the Trump administration's hardline stance against China is not merely about personal beliefs but reflects a broader ideological trend within the administration that prioritizes nationalistic and protectionist policies. This ideological alignment may invite further appointments of individuals with similar views, reinforcing a cohesive strategy toward China. The implications of this alignment could lead to a more aggressive U.S. foreign policy, impacting everything from military engagements to diplomatic negotiations. 5. Geopolitical ramifications. Should Base take on a significant role, his strategies and policies could have far-reaching consequences not only for U.S. China relations but also for how other nations perceive and interact with the U.S. A more confrontational stance could embolden allies to take similar positions or conversely strain relationships with nations that favor engagement with China. This dynamic is crucial as it affects global alliances and geopolitical stability. 6. Potential backlash and opposition. While Base's appointment might be welcomed by those favoring a tough stance on China, it could also provoke significant backlash domestically and internationally. Critics of aggressive economic policies may argue that such strategies could exacerbate tensions and lead to unintended economic consequences, such as retaliatory measures from China. Understanding this potential for backlash is significant as it could shape the political landscape surrounding his appointment and influence the administration's overall strategy. 7. Impact on domestic policy. The implications of Base's potential role may extend beyond foreign policy into domestic economic policies. His views on economic practices could influence fiscal decisions, potentially leading to changes in how resources are allocated or how industries are regulated. This could be significant for sectors that are heavily intertwined with trade and international relations, such as technology, manufacturing, and agriculture. 8. Public discourse on China. Base's vocal criticism of China's practices may also contribute to shaping the public discourse around U.S. China relations. As a prominent figure, his statements could influence how the media and the public perceive the threat posed by China, framing it as a matter of national urgency. This shift in discourse could lead to increased public support for more stringent policies, which in turn would create a feedback loop that reinforces the administration's hardline stance. In conclusion, while Kyle Bass's financial background and critical stance on China are the most apparent reasons for his potential rise within the Trump administration, the underlying implications of his appointment are multifaceted and significant. From the intertwining of economic and national security policies to the potential for significant shifts in U.S. foreign relations and domestic economic strategies, his candidacy reflects broader trends that could reshape U.S. policy towards China and influence global dynamics. As developments unfold, the focus should not only remain on his individual qualifications but also on the larger context of how such appointments could transform U.S. governance and international relations. 1. Kyle Bass's background and expertise. Kyle Bass is a prominent hedge fund manager recognized for his critical views on China and his successful predictions regarding market downturns. His expertise in economic policies, particularly concerning China, positions him as a credible candidate for a significant role within the Trump administration. This point warrants discussion on how Bass's financial acumen and previous market successes can influence U.S. economic and defense strategies, especially in the context of rising tensions with China. 2. Alignment with Trump administration's China policy. Bass's potential appointment reflects the Trump administration's strategy of surrounding itself with advisors who share its hardline views on China. His advocacy for a tougher stance against China's economic practices coincides with the administration's focus on economic security and national defense. Analyzing how this alignment impacts U.S. China relations and the potential shifts in policy could lead to a deeper understanding of the broader geopolitical landscape. 3. Implications for U.S. economic and defense policies. The possibility of Bass holding a significant position raises questions about the future direction of U.S. economic and defense policies, particularly concerning China. His appointment could signify a shift toward a more aggressive fiscal policy. This point invites an in-depth exploration of the implications for international trade, national security, and how U.S. economic strategies might evolve in response to perceived threats from China. For media portrayals and public perception, different media sources portray Bass's potential role with varying emphasis, Bloomberg focusing on strategic implications while Yahoo Finance and Investing.com highlight his finance background. This discrepancy in media narratives reflects differing public perceptions and could influence how Bass's appointment is received by various stakeholders. Discussing the role of media in shaping public opinion about political appointments, especially in the context of U.S.-China relations, is crucial for understanding the dynamics at play. 1. Henry Kissinger's strategic role in U.S.-China relations. 1970s. Henry Kissinger, serving as the U.S. Secretary of State under President Nixon, played a pivotal role in opening diplomatic relations with China. His secret trip to China in 1971 paved the way for Nixon's historic visit in 1972. This strategic engagement marked a significant shift in U.S. foreign policy, moving from isolation to engagement with a key global player. Kissinger's realpolitik approach emphasized the importance of balancing power in international relations, echoing the sentiments seen in contemporary discussions around U.S.-China dynamics. 2. Paul Volcker's appointment as Federal Reserve Chairman. 1979. Paul Volcker was appointed as the chairman of the Federal Reserve during a time of economic turmoil, including rampant inflation and an energy crisis. Volcker's aggressive monetary policies, including significant interest rate hikes, were critical in stabilizing the U.S. economy. His tenure highlighted the importance of strong leadership and decisive action in the face of economic challenges. Similar to the current emphasis on selecting individuals with a robust understanding of economic security and international relations in the context of U.S.-China tensions. 3. Robert McNamara and the Vietnam War. 1960s. As Secretary of Defense under Presidents Kennedy and Johnson, Robert McNamara was a key architect of U.S. military strategy during the Vietnam War. His decisions were influenced by a mix of economic considerations and national security concerns, drawing parallels to the current focus on how economic policies directly relate to national defense strategies, especially concerning adversaries like China. McNamara's tenure exemplifies the complexities of balancing economic interests with national security, a theme resonating in today's geopolitical landscape. Kyle Bass's potential appointment to a high-profile position in the Trump administration, particularly in the Treasury or Defense Department, highlights a pivotal shift in U.S. policy toward China amidst escalating tensions. As the administration gears up to navigate complex economic and security challenges, Bass's expertise and strong stance against Beijing position him as a formidable candidate. Economic and strategic implications. 1. Aggressive economic policy. If appointed, Bass is likely to advocate for a more aggressive economic policy towards China. His previous criticisms of China's economic practices suggest he may push for measures that could include sanctions, tariffs, or restrictions aimed at curbing Chinese influence in U.S. markets. This approach aligns with the Trump administration's broader strategy of prioritizing economic security and protecting American industries. 2. Defense spending and military strategy. In a potential role within the Defense Department, Bass could influence military strategy that emphasizes deterrence against Chinese expansionism, particularly in the South China Sea and Taiwan Strait. His financial background may also lead to a re-evaluation of defense spending to ensure that military capabilities are enhanced to counter perceived threats effectively. Political landscape and administration dynamics. 3. Reinforcement of hardline stance. Bass's nomination would reinforce the administration's hardline stance on China, potentially leading to a more unified approach among Trump's advisors. This shift could solidify the U.S. position in international negotiations and alliances, particularly with nations that share concerns over China's rising power. 4. Impact on Republican Party dynamics. Bass's influence on economic and defense policy could reshape the Republican Party's platform. His appointment might attract support from party members who advocate for a tough approach to China, potentially marginalizing more moderate voices within the party. Market reactions and economic forecast. 5. Increased market volatility. Bass's known ability to predict market downturns could lead to increased volatility in financial markets. Investors may react to his prospective appointment with caution, particularly if they anticipate aggressive policy shifts that could disrupt trade relations and economic stability. 6. Long-term economic consequences. The long-term economic consequences of a hardline approach to China could vary. While some sectors may benefit from protective measures, others, particularly those reliant on Chinese imports, might face challenges. The overall U.S. economy could experience shifts in growth patterns depending on the effectiveness of the policies implemented. International relations and global standing. 7. Strained U.S. China relations. Bass's appointment could exacerbate tensions between the U.S. and China. A more confrontational stance may lead to retaliatory measures from Beijing, further complicating international trade and diplomatic relations. 8. Realignment of global alliances. As the U.S. adopts a tougher approach, it may seek to strengthen alliances with countries that share its concerns about China. This could lead to a realignment of global alliances, potentially isolating China on the international stage. Conclusion. Kyle Bass's emergence as a top contender for a significant role in the Trump administration signals a potential shift towards a more assertive U.S. policy regarding China. His financial expertise and critical views on China make him a candidate likely to influence both economic and defense strategies significantly. As the administration navigates these complex issues, the implications of his potential appointment could resonate across various sectors, shaping U.S. economic policy, international relations, and market dynamics for years to come.